So to introduce myself, I am Stefan Blackstone-Moore. I am the Advocacy and Digital Campaigns Manager at Cats Protection, and I'm joined by Jade, who, if the microphone's working.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jade Emery, and I'm the Advocacy and Campaigns Officer for Cats Protection.
Thanks. So we're going to be talking to you a bit about email to target campaigns, and I should say at the start, my background is I was working in politics before, like Sean mentioned actually in his presentation, so I did have some cynicism around email to target campaigns. And so I want to talk about how we've tried to use it a little differently, and how the out-of-the-box functionality on engaging networks has allowed us to do that. But to start with, I've gone the wrong way. About Cats Protection, of course, we've got cat photos here, which I will come to. But start with, we are the UK's largest feline welfare charity. We are based across the whole country. We've got 34 adoption centres and 210 smaller volunteer-run branches spread across the country. So crucially for this campaign, we are a national charity and we are working in lots of MPs' areas. We're most known for rehoming cats, and we rehome around 30,000 a year, but we're also helping a lot of cats, 144,000 on average a year, with various things like neutering. We also educate owners, and of course, importantly, we run campaigns, and we have an advocacy team, which is where me and Jade come in. So we have had some successes recently on compulsory microchipping of pet cats. The government have just announced it is going to become compulsory from June next year, which is something we have used engaging networks a lot for, to put pressure on the government to do. And so we're sort of growing. For about 10 years, we've had a campaigns component in the charity, but it goes a lot further back, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But first of all, I'd just like to talk about these cats. We are cat people, of course. So this is my cat, Neve. She is from the Eastbourne Adoption Centre. I got her back in 2016. We have Impa here, if you would like to...
Yep. No. Is that better? Yep. She's an honorary Cats Protection cat because I did adopt her before I started at Cats Protection from a different unnamed charity. But she is a rescue, but she kindly posed with the logo, so I think that qualifies
She's
her.
made up for it, yeah. Mm-hmm. And she did come from another charity we work with a lot. She's RSPCA cat, I believe.
Yeah, she's an RSPCA cat, if there's anyone from RSPCA here.
And to bring things full circle here, we have Corinne from Engaging Networks, Cats Protection Cats. Are they from the Brighton branch? Archway, from the North London Adoption Centre, yes. So that is Carlos and Lois. Is that right? Yes, brilliant, thank you. So anyway, we've got the cats. I'm sorry we couldn't feature everyone's cats, but I believe there is a fun wall in the app. So if you would like to share your photos of your cats, at some point you are more than welcome to. We're open to discuss cats at any point. But anyway, this is why I'm using up the time. So the issue we are talking about today is airgun licensing. Now, this might seem like an odd campaign for a cat charity to be involved in, but unfortunately cats are often the victims of airgun shootings. We pick up around 100 media reports every single year of cats being shot with air guns. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because this is only when someone goes to the media that this is reported. A lot of cats will hide their pain very well. They will sort of possibly walk off and the owner won't find them and know what's happened. And also, for Cats Protection, we do take in a lot of cats that we find have been shot with air guns. So it's something the charity has been calling for a very, very long time. And as I mentioned, it predates us having an advocacy and campaigns team. And this is a screenshot from the Cat magazine, which I believe is the world's oldest cat magazine that Cats Protection produce. And this is from the 80s, and it refers to a petition that was run in 1984 that was presented to Parliament. And it got a lot of signatures, but of course we haven't had that change that we wanted. And what we are calling for is airgun licensing. Currently, airguns are unlicensed in England and Wales. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, the situation is slightly different. And we've used Engaging Networks for a long time to help us campaign on that. In 2017, we ran a petition that got 100,000 signatures. There was then a government consultation, which actually started in 2017, but they sometimes take a long time to respond, which we got 50,000 Cats Protection supporters to write into through an Engaging Networks page. Now, as you can imagine, what I've said here decided against licensing. They rejected our call. So just to show, those raw numbers don't always have the impact. We had a lot of supporters doing it, but it didn't result in the change we wanted. And from a sort of more public affairs perspective, this made things very difficult. There's no real legislative opportunity for this to go forward. There's no urgency behind it. that we haven't really got any power on this, so we were in a bit of an opposition. But at the same time, of course, when a cat has been shot, our supporters, cat owners in the area are extremely concerned. They're very frustrated. They get in contact saying, what's going on about this? They know we have been running this campaign for a very long time. So we were thinking, well, how do we do this? And coming on to Sean's point about email to target campaigns, we thought, well, do we just get our supporters to bombard them, say, hey, we're not happy with this? But there really isn't any process for that to go on. So what we wanted to do was try and build some more political support, smaller scale. So we're talking a lot smaller numbers, and we'll get onto that further. And this is dating back to 2021. It was a bit of a pilot we ran, and we did find out it was a lot of work. So we've only just really started revisiting it. But we decided, should we do an email to target campaign? Well, as I mentioned, my background is working for an MP. What happens when we send an email to target campaign with no real urgency behind it? What are we doing? So our supporters, they're rightly upset about this. They send an email, lands in the inbox. Then it is simply picked up by someone in the MP's office, potentially, just chucked onto a system like this. This is a system called caseworker.mp that a lot of MPs use. This is where a lot of your email to target campaigns will end up. And through this page, generally, they're assigned a tag. So it's just put onto a tag, and then you've got a list of everyone who's written about that issue. You've got then the case assigned to a policy caseworker who will either draft a response, that's probably your ideal situation because there's some thought going into it, or for a Labour MP, there is a service called the Parliamentary Research Service, which drafts these policy responses, or for Conservative MPs, there's the Policy Research Unit. And then that letter is simply uploaded to a system like Caseworker, and whenever that tag comes in, the email goes straight back out. So what have we done there? We've created a loop. Probably the MP hasn't seen it. So if we're thinking of impact, it may not have had one. Yes, there are cases, and yes, you will get your supportive MPs writing back, but it doesn't always work. And the other thing I always want to bear in mind with this is, as much as we've got our campaigners and everyone here has got their campaigners, there are people who have a high propensity to take these actions. You will have people on this caseworker system where they have hundreds and hundreds of tags. They've written about every single issue. And now I'm going to stand up for MPs here. I think controversial day to do it perhaps, but what is the salience of that issue really? If somebody is clicking through every single campaign for every single charity, you can see why those standard responses get sent. They simply don't have the capacity or time to respond to everything. So that is what happened. So we didn't want to do this. We thought there's no real point. We will just be adding to the noise. So we wanted to disrupt this process by localizing it. Now, there's more I could have gone into there, but actually Jack from C6 Digital gave a very good talk last year that detailed the flow of there, which goes more in the overview between casework and policy casework. But we wanted to sort of, because what we knew is our supporters obviously are very passionate about this when something happens in their area. It's completely normal. Well, theoretically we can talk a theory of publics type thing on here, but of course I always think that the climate change is the best example of this. We all care. When there's a flood, when your house is affected, you care a lot more. Absolutely understandable. And it is the same for MPs. MPs are people. MP staff are people. So when something comes through that is about a local issue, it has more resonance. So we wanted to make a campaign page that was specifically when we picked up these reports, using that urgency. This has happened in the last month. There's a cat being shot. There's targeted messages to our supporters because we know they know about it. They've seen it. It's in the Facebook groups. It's in the local WhatsApp groups. We wanted to give them a way to react to this, turn that frustration into a positive, and do something. Try and build that political support. Yes, it's a lot smaller scale, but we will, as we'll get onto later, start to build that political support cross-party and start to look at it and get some supporters from areas we didn't think we'd normally get. So I am now going to pass to Jade, who's going to talk about how we managed to localize this a bit, and I will come back at the end to discuss sort of the impact, although it's very small scale because we've only been piloting it. So on to the exciting world of processing rules and reference data. That's the point, that's the good.
Better? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be talking about how we use the Engaging Networks email to target functionality to allow our supporters to write to their MP about a local incident. And this is how we did it. Just to mention, everything that I'm going to talk about is out of the box, and I believe comes with the standard Engaging Networks advocacy package. So we used customized reference data to allow us to create personalized copy for emails to different MPs. The data comes from a collection of media reports on cats being shot with air weapons. We have a spreadsheet that we update on a weekly basis, and we record information such as the area of the incident, the severity, the date, and a link to a media article about the incident. So we added the applicable data to Engaging Networks by going into the target settings of the action and managing the reference data. And then we added the details of a few recent attacks to a custom reference database spreadsheet, which we downloaded from Engaging Networks. To make it a little bit easier and collaboration friendly, I made a kind of small key, which shows what the columns refer to. These fields can be used for anything you want, but in this case, we included details such as the area name, the date of the incident, a link to the media article, and the severity of the attack. The database is updated monthly ahead of email sends to supporters and then re-uploaded to Engaging Networks. We also impose a 6-month limit on any cases that we include on this spreadsheet that we're re-uploading, just so MPs aren't hearing about kind of out-of-date cases. So we use the reference data button that you can see here, which you can use when you're building copy. And we selected the source of the spreadsheet that we just uploaded, so the Airguns 2023, and then selected the different columns that we wanted to use within the copy to personalize it. Data is then pulled through and you also used in the subject line, which you can see just there, which is probably the most important part for cutting through an MP's inbox and getting their attention. So as we already discussed, mass emails to MP tend to result in quite a standard response. So since we're being really specific here and only targeting specific MPs and supporters, we're going to have a lower participation than we'd normally expect from a campaign like this. But by making the issue local, it does give the MP a chance to act on a local issue. While we're only promoting to people in the areas where there has been a shooting, we appreciate that this may be shared to others in different areas who are still passionate about this important and emotive issue. And we wanted to include a share button to WhatsApp on our thank you page. So we designed the action so that any supporters who live in an area where there hasn't been a recent incident are redirected to a petition signing page where they're not asked to re-enter their details. It just pulls through what they had already entered, and they can just click one button to sign the petition, so they still are taking an action. This was done by setting up a redirect and filtering rule, where if the supporter does not live in one of the targeted areas, they're redirected to the petition. As is often the case, there were a few cases that didn't fit neatly into the email to target that we had drafted and built already. So in the example that I've got on the screen, there was a spate of shootings in Whitney in a relatively short space of time. This meant that the default copy that we'd put together kind of read rather clumsily and didn't really highlight the severity of the issue in this area. So we set up another processing rule. So if any supporters in that area, they would be sent to a different draft, which we just added by adding a little tab here, which had more specific details on the case in Whitney for their MP. Since we're expecting quite low numbers of participation, we wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to supporters as directly as possible. We did this in the form of monthly emails, sent only to supporters in the constituency where there has been a recent attack. We used data fields to personalize the email and subject line in a similar way that we did to the copy that was going to MPs to motivate and engage the individuals with an incident that happened closer to them. The email contained a few buttons prompting the supporter to take action. I believe when we previously piloted this a couple of years ago, we also used local Facebook ads, targeted Facebook ads, but Stefan can discuss that a little bit more. But yeah, at the moment, we're just using the emails.
That's back to me, isn't it?
Impact, yeah.
I will stand up. So what was the impact? Right. So we weren't really that interested in overall conversions on this. Now, when we get to an email into an MP's inbox, it's slightly different. And that was our interest there, is how do we get the attention there? Because we have tried in the past We tried to contact afterwards, but from us, it didn't work as much. But we know the supporters in that area were concerned about it. So by having them, our theory was it would be much more effective. However, and the reason I ended up thinking about talking about this topic is when I was looking at our emails to our supporters, when you look specifically at the area, and we're talking perhaps a few hundred people in some constituencies only, when you compare it, it had a massive difference. And it's because it had that resonance, that local issue. It was in the subject line, it cut through. It's not just your standard email. It was showing up they know something's happened, and it's, I've got an email about it from Cats Protection. So it did end up having the high, and I should say this was 2021, so it is just before iOS 15 messed up open rates and everything. So we're talking about that. I don't have the specific numbers to hand, but they're relatively small, so it's quite difficult to go into detail. But they were much more effective than our standard campaign emails. We generally targeted our existing supporters. We thought there was enough in that. But yes, we did run those some geo-targeted meta ads. Now, that may well have changed. I haven't done a huge amount directly on that recently. But back in 2021, it was still a lot of work because Facebook does not like parliamentary constituency boundaries. So I was building it out of postcode regions, which was great fun. So we're not doing that again just because of time. But most importantly, what we had genuine engagement from MPs. Now, how do you tell it's genuine engagement? Well, we had MPs emailing at 10 o'clock at night saying, can we talk about this? MPs have, again, I feel like standing up for MPs again, they have a pretty tough work schedule. They're working long hours. So when it comes through at that time, from having worked for MPs, I knew that's when an MP is sending it. We had those direct communication. We did have them from staff as well. But it was sort of to set up calls. And we had it from MPs we'd never engaged with as well, who we've managed to build good relationships with as well, following on from this. And also from MPs, because we softened our ask. We're like, hey, look, we're not just talking about this. We want to talk about the fact that this is happening. So we don't need to go too into depth on the policy, but let's talk about the fact that this keeps happening. It's been happening for years and years, and we want something done about it. And we did have MPs who weren't necessarily supportive of what our main ask was, raising it and discussing it. And it was making that whole issue more salient, that it's happening across the country, mainly covered by local media, so it's not getting that national coverage. But by bringing it through that constituency route, it was much more effective for us. Now, I did cut out my limitations slide, but there are a lot of limitations to this. Mainly, you are going to be spending a lot of time filling in reference data tables and tracking what is happening for us. It is very niche to the work we're doing. It's quite a specific issue, and it was at a very specific point in time. We did have a long-term strategy around it that we would build that support in the run-up to an election. Obviously, that is a lot closer now than when we started talking about it. So, but the idea was to build that political support just from get some interest, because there was no urgency on it. There was no one else really willing to raise it, and it is quite a cat-specific issue. There are other animals shot. Birds are actually the most common shot animal, but it's cats afterwards. So for companion animals, it was the thing that resonated, and it, of course, did get that cut through as a result. I'm sure there's lots more limitations that I could cover, and if you want to ask about. But I think we will go on to questions now, or if anyone just wants to share some cat photos, you're welcome to. Just.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a few questions in here. First off, what have we got? So when you were adding news stories into the reference data table, did you have to get permission from the cat owner, news site, or wherever the reference came from to use it?
Excellent. That's not a question I planted, but that is one I wanted to cover and knew I didn't have time. So yeah, the ethics get interesting here. It's quite difficult because a lot of these case studies, they come in to Cats Protection adoption centres. They don't know who the owner is. This is linked back to our microchipping thing. It's difficult when a cat's injured and it's taken in, it's very difficult to find the owner, so there are those cases. There are some that are public. There are some that we have had contact with or other animal charities have had contact with. But there are also very difficult cases. Now, we're talking about a crime here, essentially. So if there is a follow-up question there, the other one I wanted to cover, which I'm going to squeeze in here, why didn't we just let our supporters write what they want about it? Well, this is you have problems with an issue like this. People will start making accusations. There's the rumours in the Facebook groups and the WhatsApp groups about what's happened, so we were not going to risk that. We didn't want to risk that. This is hey, this is happening. So we focused much more on the issue. We didn't go too much in the detail, but there were some we would say, no, we're not going to touch that, and no, this is too much of a complicated case to put in.
Okay, thank you. I suppose this is a fairly technical question. Could you talk a bit more about how the values in your reference data tables are matched to the supporters?
So essentially, can we go back a couple of slides? Have you got the clicker? So the reference data tables, when you download this from the system, and somebody from Engaging Networks can correct me if I'm wrong, you get a full list of MPs, and you get, I think, what was this one? That's the one, thanks. So you've got a full list of MPs, their constituency. So we were targeting by constituency. So by filling in the details in there, and then we could populate the email to the MP with that. So their postcode that they've entered matches to the MP, as a standard email to target campaign does, but then the letter is built, if you go onto the letter, to pull these fields in, essentially. Is that someone from Engaging Networks might be able to explain it better?
Sounds about right, aye. Yes, perfect, thank you. How many MPs did you get genuine engagement from?
So I'm thinking back a few years now. So this is an interesting one as well, because unfortunately a lot of cats are shot in the summer. People seem to go out more and do this in the summer. So we didn't actually run it middle of summer. So we were targeting very small areas. So I think there's about 5 or 6 MPs when we did it, but we only did 3 emails. We did this for 3 months, and we kept it very urgent. This has happened recently, and then after a few months it would come down. So it's 5 or 6, but then we just completely paused it. But the idea was it's going to be smaller numbers, but it's going to be more genuine engagement.
Yeah, perfect. So what policy progress has been made?
Well, we weren't anticipating policy progress. That's the strange thing with this one. It was essentially, it was gone. It wasn't a live issue. It had been dealt with. There was no real talk about it. So this was more about building that support. So when we had a key point to get to, like a general election, we could start putting the pressure on, and we've got those MPs ahead of that to start raising it was the concept. Obviously, we are much closer to a general election now. So it's difficult, but we're sort of piloting again, with a thought, to be honest, of how we utilise these reference tables, because we know it's having an impact. So we've been trying to think about what can we do with them, how else can we do it. But there hasn't been any real progress, which is why we've just restarted the campaign, actually, after the team's basically expanded. So we have a little bit more capacity to deal with the fact that we're getting these sudden MP meetings out of the blue that we weren't anticipating before.
Great, thanks. Personally, I think it's great you're using reference data. I love reference data.
Excellent. Another fan. I hope we've got some more converts
using it for a number of years now.
Oh. So it looks like Jack's got a question. Sorry?
Jack's asking about Facebook ads.
Oh, okay. So we geo-targeted them. Now, this may have changed, and I haven't dealt with it since then, but essentially I built a custom audience that was set by first part of whatever, 5 digits of postcode or whatever they allow. So you did not need to put much money behind it, because it was targeting a extremely small number of people who Facebook is saying, hey, don't advertise to this few people, but it worked. And you got people sharing it, and it was targeted ads as well. So much like spam adverts, it used your locale to get attention. So cat shot with air gun in Thurston. It was hyper local. It was sometimes we'd use the street name in the email to the MP because it just cut through so much more. The ads were better than our standard ones, yes. We haven't done a huge amount of advertising. Our focus is very much on the advocacy side, and we have got a core group of supporters who are willing to do this, so we're not currently doing it until we've sorted out some integration issues. But yeah, these adverts were much more effective than our normal ones, and the thing is they would also get taken and shared, so we knew that on the local groups, local community groups, they would find this and they'd say, hey, look, we've seen this, because people are posting about it all the time, of course. They're giving them that action, they're taking it. So that one's a difficult one to measure, but we do know that was happening. And we also had our branches sharing the link on Facebook with those groups as well.
Okay, sorry, were you gesturing? You wanted to make it? Right. Do you want to tell me and I'll...
That's it. Did they use any like neighborhood apps to amplify it in local areas?
What kind of apps?
Neighborhood apps where you've got like a lot of WhatsApp groups where like people, we do it in our area where we share it in our neighborhood, and I was just thinking if maybe you utilize that by sending an email out what it is in the area.
Right, okay.
So is this specific apps, or are we talking like the local Facebook groups? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, yeah, so it was going there organically, we think. Obviously, that is not a metric we can really measure, but we think people were posting it, and we know our branches because we have a lot of volunteers in the charity, so we know they were doing it as well. And we wanted this to be for them because we know that this is something our supporters are passionate about and are so frustrated about when it happens in their area, that they would sort of take it and run with it, and we'd say, like, we built this for you, essentially, was the concept. That's it. Yes. And just, I think there's another question on the back there. And I was actually just going to say, on the sharing, I think we're just using WhatsApp at the moment. Is that right? Yes,
Yeah.
which links into what Jack was saying.
At the moment, we're just using WhatsApp, and we've got, when the button, it takes you to a drafted message that kind of sounds like it was put together by the supporter, like, hey, I just took this action because there's been a shooting in our local area. We're encouraging supporters on the thank you page to only send it to local friends and family, but we appreciate that it may be sent wider than that, which is why we introduced the petition. But yeah, I think that would work for, like, I know in my street, we have our street WhatsApp group, and I think that would be like a great place to send that. And I know my neighbors are all cat owners, so I think they'd be very interested in that.
And our template message, I think, has multiple exclamation marks and question marks and things, which our editorial team take out, but I put back in.
Okay. One last question. Any tips on simplifying and speeding up the process of updating the reference data?
Can you answer that one? As a fan of reference, we've only done it on small scale, so we're updating. I don't know how much. I think we've just cut it down to like 5-6 MPs currently. Everyone else, like was featured, we chain it, so everyone else who doesn't live in those areas is sent to a chained petition rather than going back to re-enter their details. It says, oh yeah, so good news, cat hasn't been shot nearby recently, sign the petition instead. So they're sent that route, but so it's only 5 or 6 we're dealing with. But I don't know if you've got any advice on reference
One
data.
thing I would say is just do a few rows of data first, just to check that you've got the format right before you do 650 rows and have it all messed up, and that can be quite frustrating. So,
I think we did go back, didn't we? But I think we only had 5, so we were fine.
yeah, test it with a few postcodes, with a few constituencies, just make sure you've got it all right, and then copy and paste from somewhere.
And one other tip actually on it that I have thought of, so when MPs change, as they currently are at the moment, as they step down, you need to download a new reference table and re-upload it, because when we went back to this, there were some changes, so we had to put the new reference table back in.
Good tip. Okay, Jade, Stefan, thank you very much.
Thank you.